We have to focus also on job and wage creation. We have a paradox in Colorado. Have you thought about it? We have 2.9% unemployment, among the lowest in the country. Yet 1 in 4 of Coloradans are on Medicaid. How can that be? 1 in 5 of our children, according to a recent study, are growing up in a home where neither mom or dad or the adults in the family have a regular full-time job. Much of the growth in our economy has been lower wage jobs. We have to focus on higher wage job creation. That has been my career, has been focusing on how do you bring those jobs into Colorado and how do you get kids from into those jobs. And so it's a focus on innovation and entrepreneurship, on better improving our schools and better alignment between our schools and the jobs of the future, the jobs that they need to have, and also more access to capital, which we have a dearth of at the growth income stage, and I'll talk maybe more about that later. So smart growth is the solution, not growth restrictions, but also wage and job growth, and a focus on bringing more and better jobs to Colorado. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug Robinson. Carrie Kennedy.
So it's unanimous. I also oppose putting arbitrary limits on growth and on housing construction. Growth in our state is one of the biggest challenges that the next governor will face, and quite frankly, a lot of future governors. I have watched the state's population double in my lifetime. I remember when Bellevue was the edge of the world. And the forecasters are telling us Colorado's population is going to double again by about the time that my teenagers are my age. Another 4 to 5 million people are forecasted to move into our state. But we haven't adequately prepared for the growth that we have today. People can't afford to live where they work. They can't afford to stay in the communities that they grew up in, and we are all sitting in traffic. But arbitrary limits on development and on growth aren't the answer. We can't stop this growth. We need to do a much better job managing this growth. And you don't have to look any farther than California, in which 500 jurisdictions in that state have placed artificial caps on growth. And the studies, the results from that experiment out in California is that growth is a little bit like toothpaste. If you squeeze one end of the tube, it just pops out at the other. And what they have found is those limits simply force growth and sprawl into other areas. So what we need going forward are collaborative strategies, regional strategies, where we have business and industry working with state, federal, local governments, as well as our nonprofits and our universities to develop growth strategies that keep us all moving, that invest in innovative mobility solutions, where we make the investments to modernize our infrastructure to keep up with the demands of growth. Investments in affordable housing so people can remain in the communities where they work and where their families are. And investments in water so that we can supply clean water to growing urban population. We all need to roll up our sleeves. This is the work that is in front of us, and I believe Colorado can do it better.
Thank you, Carrie Kennedy. We're going to keep the microphone down there, work it back here. Gubernatorial candidates, you're doing a great job. You're making my job easy. We're going to stay at 3 minutes per answer for this next question, question number 2. And just a description as we were developing this question, the idea and the topic of affordable housing came up. Now, affordable housing is a defined term that includes programs like Section 8. It includes developer tax incentive programs. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that this next question is aimed at housing affordability and attainability, not necessarily affordable housing as a defined term. So as realtors in the room, we've all experienced some of the benefits of this hot real estate market, but if you've ever worked with a buyer and you've submitted an offer and there's been 20, 30, and sometimes 60 offers competing depending on the price point, we know that attainability, especially for first-time buyers, can be real difficult. We all believe in the American dream as realtors, and that's why we're in this industry. So the question is, please explain your position on housing that is attainable for Coloradans at all levels, and discuss what public policy solutions you would like Colorado to consider addressing this increasing problem. So we've gotten our feet wet. Let's go deeper on housing.
So housing has become too expensive. Colorado's long history of being an affordable housing market, I think, is behind us. And as everybody here knows, an awful lot of people in our state can't afford to live where they work. They can't afford to stay in the communities that they grew up. People are being priced out of the market. A lot of this is basic economics. We get 100,000 people net increase in our population each year, and yet our housing units coming online are only about 25,000. So we have a lot more demand than we have supply. And the result is upward pressure on the housing market. About 1 in 4 Coloradans today are spending more than half of their income on housing. So it's become a real challenge for all of us to think about what steps we need to take to keep housing affordable in our communities. When I was the CFO for the city of Denver, I helped start the Metro Mortgage Assistance Program, which is helping middle-income, first-time home buyers get into a home with mortgage assistance. 1,400 families in the metro area have been able to buy their first homes through that program. And as a candidate for governor, I have called on Colorado to develop its first affordable housing fund. I helped start the Affordable Housing Fund when I was CFO for the city of Denver, the first investment. As you all know, developers can get usually 60 to 80% of the financing that they need, but often there's a gap in closing the affordable financing projects. The federal credits, the local support doesn't get you all the way there. Colorado is one of the few states in the country that doesn't have a state affordable housing fund. I have proposed seeding that fund with $50 million from our state's unclaimed property program. There is surplus in that reserve, and we can use that money to close that last financing gap for local communities to be able to preserve and construct more affordable housing in our communities.
Thank you, Doug Robinson.
Great. So a couple weeks before Christmas, I gathered 25 CEOs just a couple of blocks from here on 17th Street of technology businesses. And these were some of our large public companies, Home Advisor and Zayo Group, and smaller companies as well. I asked them collectively, what are your challenges to growing your businesses here in Colorado? And I was surprised by the answers. Number one, not surprising, was access to talent, workforce development. But number two was the cost of housing and traffic infrastructure challenges. Third was access to capital. But I was surprised at how this issue is front and center for some of our leading business leaders. And so here you're going to see a little bit of a difference between a Republican and a Democrat in terms of how we approach these sorts of issues. I tend to want to look to private sector solutions, and I look around and I see some great things that are working in our state. I'll talk first about the Home Builders Association in Colorado Springs, who recognized this issue a couple of years ago, partnered with all of the school districts in Colorado Springs to bring SHOP back into high school. And they are teaching framing and carpentry and welding and electrician so that these kids can go and find jobs. And you know what? It's making a difference in that bottleneck of educated tradesmen, subcontractors in the building area. I don't know if you saw this, but recently the Gary Community Foundation led the way, partnered with the Gates Family Foundation and others to come up with $24 million that they're going to buy over 1,000 home sites in Denver, and they're going to lease them on a long-term basis, 99 years, to homeowners to build homes, taking away basically the cost of the land in that. So that's a start. They want to expand that. They can't expand that. The housing defect reform, which we talked about, this passed last year in the legislature. I don't think, frankly, it went quite far enough. I think we need to move it more towards arbitration, but we're seeing a growth in condo construction because of that development. And also, you probably saw last year that there was a Metro Vision 2017 that came out. Regional governments and builders and others coming together to look at encouraging higher density and mixed-use development to solve some of our housing challenges. So things are going on. As governor, I would encourage and bring people together to collaborate and have private sector solutions to this problem.
Thank you, Doug. Mike Johnston.
Thanks so much. Here's when you know you have a problem in this sector. When I was talking about 6 months ago to a young woman who just finished her teacher training program, and she had applied for a job in Denver Public Schools and had gotten the job and was deciding if she was going to take it or not. And she said, unfortunately, she had decided at the end she wasn't going to take the job because she just couldn't find housing that was affordable at the teaching scale that she was going to get. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry we're losing you. Where are you going to? And she said, San Francisco. And I was like, okay, if that's the spot we found ourselves in, which is you're down marketing to San Francisco, we probably have a problem. So here's what I think we do about it, which is the reality that you all know is that our current plan for solving affordable housing is not going to work, which is right now, because of the increased demand, when you have a developer that buys a lot at market rate and then builds units on that plot at market rate, the amount of cash it's going to take from the state to buy down that cost to make that affordable, to get to 60% or 80% of AMI, is impossible. There's not going to be enough cash in the state budget ever to do that. So you have to think about a different way to close that gap. And the asset the state does have that we can use is not cash, but it's land. So what I've proposed is there ought to be public-private partnerships where the state takes the land assets we have, whether they are local, whether it's local land, whether it is public schools, whether it is community colleges, whether it's public hospitals, even down the street. You take something